Mukesh Ambani owns a home worth more than most skyscrapers, employs hundreds of servants, throws weddings costing hundreds of millions, and controls industries used by over 1 billion people. This isn't the life of a billionaire. This is what a trillionaire looks like. Antilia rises above Mumbai like a private skyscraper, but it's not a hotel and it's not an office tower. This is a home with 27 towering floors stretching over 400,000 square feet, enough space to swallow a city block whole. Inside, nearly 600 staff members move in shifts, tending to every corner, every hour, every whim. There is a full brigade for housekeeping, a culinary team, gardeners, technicians, and a security force that rivals a small army. The logistics echo a 5-star resort, yet it is all for one family. Here, the idea of a household explodes into something closer to a living institution, a private operation running at the scale of a public landmark. Permissions for a project like Antilia don't come by accident. They require the silent machinery of the state to move in tandem with private ambition. The Airports Authority of India signed off on a no-objection certificate for Antilia's 173 meters in height in December 2018, clearing the way for a tower that could rival aircraft approach paths. The Maharashtra Coastal Zone Management Authority, too, put its stamp of approval on a site locked inside Mumbai's tightly regulated coastline. Official documents trace a paper trail of green lights, but public reaction was far less tidy. Ratan Tata, one of India's most respected industrialists, cut through the luxury with a single line. The person who lives in there should be concerned about what he sees around him and how he can make a difference. With every clearance, the boundaries between private empire and public authority grew more porous, and the first cracks of moral backlash began to show. In December 2018, the city of Udaipur became the stage for something that looked less like a wedding and more like a summit of empires. The Ambanis chose the Taj Lake Palace and the 16th century City Palace as their setting, reserving entire islands for a week-long celebration that blurred the line between private festivity and public spectacle. The reported budget, around 7 billion rupees, would fund a small nation's annual festival. But this was not just about opulence. Every detail seemed engineered for maximum influence. The guest list read like a global power index. Hillary Clinton, Ariana Huffington, and Henry Kravis brushed shoulders with Bollywood royalty and India's most senior ministers. Mark Zuckerberg, Sundar Pichai, and Satya Nadella were spotted at the same banquets as Mukesh Ambani's closest political allies. Saudi Aramco's Amin Nasser, tech billionaires, and heads of state arrived on chartered jets, many with diplomatic corridors cleared by the Indian government. For 3 days, Udaipur's airspace was a parade of private aircraft, while the city's streets swarmed with armed security drawn from both private firms and state police. Inside the palaces, Beyoncé delivered a private performance. Michelin star chefs flew in from Europe. A fleet of luxury cars ferried guests across the city, and the catering operation prepared thousands of meals each day. But the real feast was for the deal makers. Boardrooms dissolved into ballrooms. Between ceremonies, business alliances simmered and cross-border partnerships took shape in side rooms and candlelit gardens. The wedding functioned as a soft power engine, where the guest list itself became a map of future deals, and every handshake hinted at the next billion-dollar agreement. Here, family celebration became a diplomatic tool, and the boundaries between dynasty, corporation, and state grew ever more indistinct. March 2019. While Mumbai's heat pressed down on the city, Akash Ambani and Shloka Mehta's wedding launched a spectacle that spanned continents and defied ordinary scale. This time, the Ambanis didn't just reserve a palace, they commandeered an entire alpine town. St. Moritz, Switzerland, better known for hosting royalty and Winter Olympians, became the site of a private summit where the boundaries between family celebration and global power gathering blurred. Swiss police cleared roads for convoys of blacked-out vehicles. Charter flights ferried in guests from every corner of the globe, each arrival logged with the precision of a diplomatic mission. The Chainsmokers played an exclusive set for a crowd that, in any other context, would have been a G20 summit. 2,000 guests shuttled between mountain peaks and luxury hotels, their movements mapped out by a logistics team that rivaled a small nation's event command center. But the spectacle didn't end in the Alps. When the party returned to Mumbai, the city's arteries bent to the will of the Ambanis. Traffic routes were redrawn. Police escorts, usually reserved for heads of state, became standard for wedding guests. At Jio World Center and then Antilia, the celebrations continued with a scale of security and hospitality that echoed the earlier Udaipur gathering, but now stretched across 2 continents. Every detail, from the imported snow machines to the synchronized arrivals of VIPs, pointed to an operation that functioned less like a family event and more like a state visit. The repetition wasn't excess for its own sake, it was a deliberate, strategic display. With each event, the Ambanis weren't just celebrating. They were rehearsing what it means to operate at a level where private power is indistinguishable from public authority. September 2016. India's telecom market, once a battlefield of giants, is about to become the stage for something no one has seen before. Reliance. Jio launches with an offer that sounds impossible. Free, unlimited data, free voice calls, and not just for a day or a week, but for months. Overnight, the rules of the game are rewritten. Lines stretch outside Jio stores. SIM cards become the hottest commodity in the country. By the end of 2017, over 100 million subscribers had signed up, and the avalanche only accelerates. Jio crosses 200 million users in less than 2 years, a pace no global telecom has matched. This is not just a price war, it is a corporate blitzkrieg powered by billions in investment and a private fiber optic network that sprawls across the subcontinent. Jio's towers rise in city centers and remote villages alike, promising 4G speeds to anyone with a phone. The old guard, Airtel, Vodafone, Idea, watch as their market share crumbles. Some merge to survive, others bleed cash in a desperate race to keep up. The industry's average revenue per user, once a reliable rupees 420 to rupees 450 per month, plunges to nearly half that within 2 years. Profit margins evaporate. Boardrooms fill with panic. But for Mukesh Ambani, this is not chaos. It is orchestration. TRI filings chart the numbers. Jio's market share rockets from 0 to more than a third of all Indian subscribers by early 2018. Competitors file complaints, regulators scramble, yet the tide is unstoppable. Jio's platform becomes more than a mobile network. It is the nervous system for a new digital India, linking e-commerce, entertainment, payments, and soon retail. With a single corporate move, Ambani does not just sell connectivity. He reshapes the country's infrastructure, bending the arc of an entire industry to his will. The scale is so vast, the disruption so total, that the story stops being about business and starts to feel like the blueprint for a new kind of power. Across India's towns and villages, a new kind of empire is taking shape, one that doesn't just transmit data, it moves physical goods, money, and daily life itself. Reliance. Retail is not a chain of stores. It is a network that stretches from Mumbai's neon-lit malls to the dusty lanes of the smallest tehsil, swallowing up competitors and rewriting the rules of commerce as it goes. By the end of fiscal year 2025, Reliance will operate more than 12,000 stores, a number that dwarfs even the biggest supermarket chains in Europe or America. Each outlet is another node in Ambani's web, feeding data back to headquarters, driving foot traffic, and linking shoppers to a digital ecosystem that never lets go. But this is not just about urban luxury. The real conquest happens far from the glass towers, inside rural Mandis, where Reliance Fresh and JioMart have started to look less like shops and more like public utilities. Farmers sign exclusive contracts. Small-town grocers become franchisees, their shelves stacked with Reliance-branded goods delivered by a supply chain that runs with military precision. Trucks, warehouses, and cold storage facilities form a logistical backbone that rivals state infrastructure, moving everything from onions to iPhones across thousands of kilometers each day. The boundaries between digital and physical blur. Jio customers earn loyalty points that can be spent in Reliance outlets. Grocery purchases trigger offers in Jio's payment app. Every transaction, every scan, every delivery becomes another data point, feeding a cross-selling engine that is designed to keep customers inside the Reliance universe for life. For a growing slice of India's population, shopping, banking, streaming, and even healthcare now flow through Ambani's hands. This is vertical integration at a scale that feels almost governmental. Supply chains become arteries, storefronts become outposts. In towns where the government's presence is thin, Reliance's network is the new infrastructure, steady, reliable, and everywhere. The line between private company and public service fades. The empire does not just sell goods. It sets the terms for how modern India eats, shops, and connects, one transaction at a time. Inside the corridors of power, money doesn't just talk. It unlocks doors. In 2018, India's electoral bond scheme created a new, anonymous highway for corporate donations to political parties. The public ledgers show only the destination, never the true sender. But analysts following the breadcrumbs estimate that Reliance-linked entities funneled between 1.2 billion and 1.5 billion rupees into the system during the 2023 to 2024 election cycle. The numbers hide behind layers of trusts and intermediaries, but the pattern is clear. The larger the bond purchase, the more often policy seems to bend in Reliance's direction. The official meeting registers offer a glimpse behind the curtain. On October 12, 2023, Mukesh Ambani's name appears on the Prime Minister's office log for a Digital India review. Less than a month later, Reliance Jio's chief technology officer sits across from the telecom minister and senior bureaucrats at the Department of Telecommunications. The agenda marked 5G spectrum allocation. By December, Reliance's industrial head is logged in a finance ministry session on special economic zone incentives. Each entry is a date-stamped record of access. These meetings coincide with critical phases in Jio's expansion, telecom policy shifts, and the rollout of new tax breaks for corporate giants. The logs are partial, redacted, sometimes missing names or outcomes. But even the fragments tell a story. While competitors wait months for an audience, Reliance executives appear on meeting lists again and again, often at the most sensitive moments for their business interests. The machinery of the state, once a distant, faceless bureaucracy, now looks more like an open channel, where the right donation or the right handshake can move policy from idea to implementation. In this world, power isn't measured by what you own, but by how quickly you can redraw the rules. The real currency is access, tracked in meeting registers, electoral bond ledgers, and the silent choreography between corporate boardrooms and government ministries. It is a system where influence is formalized, receipts are hidden, and every transaction is another step toward a new kind of sovereignty. This is not just business as usual. It is the architecture of a private empire, built not just on wealth, but on the ability to shape the laws that govern everyone else. For millions across India, the tap for daily life no longer runs through government pipes. It runs through Reliance. The numbers alone tell the story. By 2023, Jio commands nearly 38% of the nation's wireless subscribers, a figure that dwarfs any single competitor and rivals the scale of state-run utilities. When a private company's network becomes the main line for phone calls, video, banking, and even school lessons, the boundaries between corporate service and public right begin to dissolve. In rural markets, the effect is even starker. Reliance Retail's supply chain stretches into the heart of villages where government presence is a distant rumor. Grocers, once independent, now rely on Reliance trucks to stock their shelves. Farmers sign contracts that bind their harvest to Reliance's distribution grid. For many, the first reliable cold storage, the first steady delivery of goods, arrives not with a government badge, but with the Reliance logo stamped on a crate. This is not just convenience, it's dependency. Jio's fiber runs beneath highways, through farmland, past towns where the only other infrastructure is a crumbling water tower or a single-lane road. When the network goes down, entire communities lose access, not just to entertainment, but to payments, banking, and emergency alerts. The company's payment app processes transactions for small businesses from Kerala to Kashmir. In places where the local post office is shuttered, Reliance's logistics hubs become the new nerve centers for commerce and communication. The platform is no longer a marketplace, it's the backbone of daily existence. In this new order, Indian consumers become silent stakeholders in a system they do not control. The choice is an illusion. Jio's dominance means opting out is nearly impossible for anyone who wants to participate in modern life. The company's reach is so deep, its services so essential, that the distinction between private profit and public utility has all but vanished. When private infrastructure becomes the default lifeline, the power to decide who gets access, at what price, and on what terms quietly shifts from parliament to boardroom. The rules of the game are no longer written by the state, they are set by a single family's empire, and the rest of the country simply lives inside it. Mukesh Ambani's net worth no longer fits inside the frame of ordinary fortunes. According to the most recent Bloomberg Billionaires Index, his personal wealth hovers near $115 billion, a figure that shifts with the markets but always lands him at the very top of Asia's rich list. But numbers alone do not capture the scale. Put Ambani's fortune next to India's gross domestic product, nearly $3.5 trillion, and the comparison starts to look less like a gap between rich and poor, and more like the difference between a nation and its ruler. His wealth is now estimated at over 3% of the entire country's annual output. In a nation of 1.4 billion people, the resources of one man could fund entire ministries, bankroll state programs, or underwrite the annual budgets of several Indian states combined. A single year's growth in Ambani's net worth can outpace the entire health or education budget of a major state. The scale is so vast, so out of proportion to ordinary experience, that it starts to resemble something closer to state power than private success. Forbes and Bloomberg track his trajectory with the same tools they use for sovereign wealth funds, not family fortunes. On a global graph, Ambani's financial arc sits alongside the GDPs of small countries, his empire mapped not in neighborhoods or cities, but in entire economic zones. This is not a story about luxury anymore. It's about the machinery that moves when one man decides to act. When Ambani expands, industries bend. When he invests, stock markets ripple. When he hosts a celebration, airspace and city streets are redrawn. The line between private wealth and public authority has faded to a shadow. What Ambani controls is not just a pile of money, but the levers that shape how millions live, work, and connect. At this scale, the old categories break down. Billionaire, business leader, philanthropist, they do not fit. The only language left is that of sovereignty. Mukesh Ambani has become a prototype for a new kind of ruler, one whose fortune is measured not in dollars, but in the power to shape a nation's destiny. This is not wealth anymore. This is power. Today, Mukesh Ambani's world is a blueprint, where fortunes do not just buy palaces, they shape the skyline, rewrite industries, and bend policy. His reach now stretches beyond luxury into a private sphere of influence that rivals nations. As power consolidates at this scale, the lines between tycoon and sovereign begin to blur. The future is not billionaire, it is trillionaire. What happens when private wealth becomes the next form of rule? Share your thoughts below.